Good afternoon. Welcome to our September Reliability and Security Oversight Update. My name is Maylee Cook, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here today. Let's begin with our announcements. First, we'd like to remind you of GridSecCon, which is happening October 7th through 10th in Las Vegas, and we hope to see you there. And you can use that QR code that was on the slide to register. Also, the following week will be our Reliability and Security Workshop in San Diego, California. That will be October 14th and 15th. Registration is open and the agenda was just released last week. And it will also be followed by the WECC meeting on October 16th. So we'd love to see you either virtually or in person in San Diego. We will offer a Grid Fundamentals course virtually November 4th and 5th. This is our course that offers the essential things you need to know about the grid. We'd love to see you there. And we will drop the registration information in the chat. We will be hosting our Reliability in the West discussion series on November 5th at 11 a.m. Mountain. The topic for our November session will be the winter outlook. GridSecCon is happening November 18th and 19th, and there is the registration information on your screen. And there are multiple ways to participate, so here's some of those details for you. We are also pleased to announce our Electromagnetic Transient Strategic Workshop, and that will be November 19th and 20th here at the WECC offices in Salt Lake City. And we'll drop the link to that in the chat for you as well. I wanted to highlight that this meeting will not be happening in October. That is the day of the WECC meeting, October 16th. That's the third Thursday. So the next time we will come together for this call will be November 20th. All WECC meetings are conducted in accordance with the WECC antitrust policy and the NERC antitrust compliance guidelines. All participants must comply with the policy and guidelines. This meeting is public. Confidential or proprietary information should not be discussed in open session. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted publicly. By participating, you give your consent for your name, voice, image, and likeness to be included in that recording. WECC strives to ensure the information presented today is accurate and reflects the views of WECC. However, all interpretations and positions are subject to change. If you have any questions, please contact WECC's legal counsel. We love for you to participate in this call. Please send any questions or concerns you have via chat and use the raise hand feature if you have a question you'd like to ask aloud, and we'll give you the option to unmute and ask it. We have a whole slew of updates for you today. There's a highlight of what we'll be covering, and we'll turn it over first to Fahad.
Thank you, Maylee. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fahad Ansari. I'm Senior Technical Advisor in the Oversight Planning Group. I will be going over some of the significant NERC and WECC items that have recently been published or occurred. Next slide. First item on the list today is a general reminder on soon-to-be effective standards beginning October 1st, 2025. About WECC 4 and TOP 2-5 will become effective. Also not mentioned here, but earlier today, FERC approved EOP 12-3, which will be effective October 1 as well. Now, second item available on the NERC website is the presentation and streaming webinar from the August 18, 2025 Cold Weather Preparedness Small Group Advisory General Session. This session is intended to provide an educational opportunity for registered entities to meet with NERC and regional entity representatives to discuss the cold weather preparedness standards and possible compliance approaches in an open and non-audit environment. Next item is the Currently Compliant podcast. the NERC released the seventh, if you can go back one slide, sorry. NERC released the seventh installment of its compliance podcast called Currently Compliant. The podcast series is intended to be a quick way to bring attention to frequently asked questions and provide clear insight on important compliance topics. The latest episode of the podcast focuses on the topic of abeyance. This episode defines the concept of abeyance and clarifies how it will be used within the ERO enterprise. Next item is NERC issued a level 2 alert recommendation to the industry regarding large load interconnection, study, commissioning, and operations. The alert includes 5 primary recommendations regarding TO interconnection requirement, TP and PC interconnection and system-wide studies, transmission owner load commissioning, transmission owner operating protocols, and long-term forecasting for the planners, including the transmission planners, resource planners, and planning coordinators. The alert has a response due date of January 28, 2026. So with regard to the alert for cross-border remote access to BPS elements, the responses for this alert were due on this past Monday, on September 15th. If there is any applicable entity that has not submitted a response or missed the deadline, they will receive a reminder from NERC, and WECC will be aware of any non-responders within our footprint. And we will likely perform follow-up actions regarding any best practices or responses that are concerning, or in cases where we need more information related to that alert. And lastly, Events Analysis shared a new lesson learned. Lesson learned documents are a resource enabling industry to identify problems, find what works, document the process, and share that with the industry. The creation of lessons learned document is a collaborative effort between NERC, the regional entities, and the registered entities. The latest document shares the lessons learned related to a company commissioning its first installations of hybrid battery energy storage systems and PV sites. But during the commissioning process, controller integration challenges caused 2 IBR site batteries to create large interconnection-wide oscillations. It deep dive into that, into 3 events, and provides some well-documented lessons learned. That is it from me, Nelly. Thank you.
Thank you, Fahad. I'm not seeing any questions for you at the moment. We can go on to Curtis Cruz.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you for being here today. I did want to take one additional extreme weather thought here. I know we're talking about cold weather most of the time in these updates, but wanted to make people aware September 15th, this Monday, NOAA predicted a G3 geomagnetic storm warning. And of course, that has opportunities here on Earth with our system, with the power grid. It could be strong. It's a G3 geomagnetic storm warning that came out. And this is part of an 11-year cycle. Sun activity increases in that cycle, and they're expecting to observe increased activity for the rest of the year. So please watch out for those storm updates. Make sure that TPL7, that's part of the overall thought process for mitigating risk. But we're going to be in a condition with more geomagnetic storms, according to NOAA. So that's just something to get out there, get in front of you. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. Today, FERC did take action on EOP 12-3. They did approve it. they did, I guess you could call it, accelerate the implementation plan associated with EOP 12-3. Generally, implementation plans don't get changed. I don't know when the last one was changed, but this is something new, something that wasn't necessarily known to be occurring per se, but there's always that option for them to do that. And so October 1st, 2025, as was mentioned, is the effective date for EOP 12-3. And my monitor just went out, which is not good. Must be a sunstorm. But there's already been some questions associated with the implementation plan. And we really want to take a look at the effects of the differences in the standard. And one of the things, R1 requires that evaluation of the ECWT every 5 years. There were some small changes in R1, but those small changes would take into effect when you do your next extreme cold weather temperature. I think it'd be prudent for sure to start addressing the missing data, the thought processes there, how you evaluated that. I'm sure those are questions that we're going to be asking in any compliance evaluation. Related to that, the drafting team for 2024-03 and NAGF had created some implementation guidance. It's went through some review, and I think it's very close to being put out on as an ERO endorsed document. I'm not sure exactly where that is out there, but it should be pretty close to being posted out there, which will give people a lot of ideas on how to approach some of the missing data in some of the documents. But it is something that hopefully people were kind of preparing for. I know it's hard to prepare for a standard in some respects, especially in flight. And with this change in the implementation plan, there are probably several more questions that come about. Do I need to create a new plan for this year? What's the training look like? Well, if you start looking at the implementation plan for EOP 12-3 and the language, take for instance, the changes to R4, hopefully were relatively minimal. We talked about generator cold weather critical components, freeze protection measures on those. The standard, but prior to that, hadn't necessarily mentioned it. It just said, annual inspection and maintenance of generating unit freeze protection measures. It didn't talk about implemented on generator cold weather critical components. So in theory, that's already in your plan or was captured in your plan. And that's probably what you've been training on throughout this time period. So as more information comes out, I'll certainly try to provide some outreach. I know the RSAW was developed prior to the 321 process. After the 321 process, it was updated. We're working with NERC on how to release that, what that looks like because of this change. I mean, the EOP 12-3, the simple fact that it went through a 321 process, and now that it has been approved with an accelerated implementation plan, are some new avenues that NERC and the ERO in the industry haven't been through yet. So we'll be working through those. I will tell you that Align is in the process of being updated. I think I've mentioned that a couple times in this update. It'll be right now what we're looking at is the PDS module for Align being used as an event-driven PDS, meaning you have to create the PDS, submit it to us for any cap extension, which we don't expect too many of those to begin with, and any generator cold weather constraints. Now, the cold weather constraints, we do expect quite a few. In fact, if you look at the implementation plan, between now and October 1st, if you haven't been doing it already, you should be looking at constraints that you may have already declared. Now remember, under -2, we never saw those unless we audited them. Under -3, you have to submit those that meet requirement 8 and attachment 1. And we're going to use the PDS module to do that. And you have to submit those within 45 days of the effective date. So October 1st, if that's the effective date, 45 days after, any current constraints that you have that meet attachment 1 will need to be supplied to us. Now, I'm sure people are going, what if a line isn't ready? We're working, well, we've kind of already got a thought process on a backup plan for that. Submitting to a secure site some of the information that's associated with these if need be. We are hoping and we're working with NERC to make sure that a line is ready by October 1st. So now that issue in and of itself is pretty significant, thinking about those constraints and how you're evaluating those. I can tell you that I'm involved with a group that is trying to train the auditors on and other staff across the ERO enterprise on the approval, for lack of a better term, of extensions, cap extensions, and the validation of the generator cold weather constraints. I fully expect that we'll have some outreach to the industry on some of that as well, about what that looks like. From a process perspective, it's not much different than any other event-driven PDS. You submit, you look at some questions, you provide some information, you fill out a spreadsheet, you put evidence quote in the SEL. The idea with the process, if you're unfamiliar with the process, we can get you that process document. If you go out to the archive standards under Project 2024-03, it's currently there. One of the actions that we have to do, slides are not supposed to be changing. So we'll see what happens there. Sorry, Jerome. One of the things that is out there, that process will be appended to the PDS schedule, which is in a one-stop shop for compliance. I'm not sure exactly the timing of that, since it just occurred this morning that they approved it, but I know that's one of the actions that we'll be working on. As this moves forward, if you have questions, please submit them to me or submit them to Bailey, and we will try to get the best answers we can. I think overall, none of the questions that have been asked really are surprising. We just have to look at and evaluate each individual one and ensure that the ERO enterprise is on the same page. Abeyance is part of EOP 12-3. There was a recent NERC podcast on abeyance, and I'll try to pull that up after my discussion, get it in the chat, or give it to Meili to get it in the chat. But that kind of discussed what abeyance looked like from the NERC perspective. So just be aware of that. And we're here. Sorry, there are no slides. I didn't have time between FERC's announcement and this meeting to even think about slides. But we will be trying to address any questions you have, and please don't hesitate to send them. We have several different emails that you can send out there. I'll send the most appropriate one that I have access to, but you're more than welcome to send them individually to me as well. No, it's surprising for folks. I know it's a change from what FERC normally does in these cases. They haven't seen the order yet, so I don't think they advised or made any, they didn't mention anything in the presentation that they provided today about any changes to the standard, but if there are, we'll take a look at those and move forward. But thank you, Jenny, for doing that. But that's about all I have. It's a pretty healthy bit today, to say the least, but appreciate your attention and appreciate the interaction. If you have questions, don't hesitate.
We did get a question right at the beginning of your update, Curtis. It says, does WECC know when the NERC alert related to Order 881 and AARs will be issued?
That one, not sure myself. It's kind of a little out of my bandwidth. I will tell you, Jenny, that we are working on a practice guide associated with FAC 8 and Order 881 that hopefully will be released relatively soon. But I'm not aware of the NERC alert release. So I can try to find out they don't like compliance too often, NERC alerts, but I'll try my best. See what we get and provide the information.
We have another question. If EOP 12-2 annual training has already been given to personnel, do we have to retrain everyone on EOP 12-3 by 10/1/2025?
Yeah, I don't think that's reasonable to expect, right? I really don't believe that's reasonable to expect. If you look at, I don't believe R5 necessarily changed, R4 did. I mean, there was some small changes in R5, but very little. I think if you hit on your training in your plan on the generator cold weather critical components, that aspect of R4 that changed, annual inspection of those things, I think we need to be very reasonable in our approach to that. I don't think we can expect people to train all their people within 12 days. So that's my take on that. And that's another one that I'm sure we'll have some discussions at the ERO Enterprise, because the EOP, that R5, not even listed in the implementation plan per se. And the reason it wasn't in that implementation plan, as a member of that drafting team, it was considered, well, there's not a whole lot of changes, so there's really not a whole lot of impact there. But I fully don't expect a whole lot of wholesale changes between what you already trained on in EOP 12-3 for folks. Hopefully that answered it as best as I could.
Thank you, Curtis. We can go on to the NERC and WECC standards update from Donovan.
All right. We'll get the technology working here. All right. So, yep, my name is Donovan Crane. I'm a senior engineer here in the standards development department at WECC. And so we're going to go over some NERC and WECC standards happenings updates, especially as we had the NERC SC meetings this week. So let's start off with NERC happenings. If we can go to the next slide. So we had the Order 901 related projects ballot and comment period 2. That closed on the 10th. And it was pretty encouraging to see there was quite a few that passed with significant approval percentages. There was one standard that did not. That was our mod 26-2 friend. It was really close though. It was almost 65%. But the other two projects, their standards passed approval. And they'll be looking to go to final ballot for those. 2020-06 for mod 26 will be looking for an additional ballot period, which is noted in the bullet point there that says there's going to be a shorter third and final ballot period for the projects. So there'll be a shorter, all of them got the waivers approved yesterday at the SC to shorten the ballot periods to as little as 5 days, which basically means they're going to be 5 days. Technical language in there that says we can go as little as 5, but they're aiming for 5. And to do that is they're trying to get this ballot passed for mod 26 is one of the big things, and meet that FERC directive deadline in November. So the projection is, I'm going to share this here in the chat. There's the projected posting schedules that NERC puts out. This was shared and updated yesterday at the NERC SC for when the anticipated ballot and comment periods for these various standards are going to be. One of the things that was softly committed to that NERC is willing to try to help us in industry out with is, because it will be a 5-day shortened ballot and comment period, is they are going to aim for a Monday through Friday, so there's not a weekend overlap. If for some reason they need to meet quorum, they will extend that into the next week, but they will not be trying to run the 5 days over a weekend. They want to give full 5 days, business days, for entities and industry to cast their ballots and get their comments in. So look for that. The final ballot for several of these will also be 5 days as well. They got the waivers for all 3 of the projects. And it shows in that projected posting schedule the weeks that they are anticipating at this point to send those out here at the end of September and beginning of October, so that then they can meet that FERC directive deadline. Also on top of that, we do have quite a few projects that are out working outside of the 901 that are going out. We have EMT, we have SIP 14, there's BAL projects. Many are going out. There's a few for informal comment periods. There's some that are going out for formal comment and ballot. I'd encourage to take a look at that projected posting by NERC, as that's the most up-to-date one that we have received at the SC and through the standards of what they see the schedule looking like. So that's that. They are still looking for, as of today, I believe, is when it closes. They extended the drafting team member solicitation for the upcoming Order 901 projects for Milestone 4, the operational studies and the planning studies drafting teams. And they had those open through today. They extended it so that they could make sure that both they're getting the right mix and the right expertise and representation on those drafting teams. And again, these are going to be Milestone 4 associated with NERC, with FERC Order 901. So they're going to be that high priority, lots of eyes on it, lots of scrutiny, and a condensed time frame than normal standard development would be as well. So if for some reason you didn't know and you'd like to throw your name into the hat for that to participate on those, I believe through the end of the day, they are accepting continued drafting team member solicitation. So there's that's going on at NERC. And like I said, there's between the posting schedule and other projects, there's quite a few that are still ongoing, but these are some big things that we want to make sure that everyone's aware of, including, the cold weather that Curtis was talking about and some updates from Fahad with the standards that are coming into effect. But there's still a plethora of projects that are just in active development as of right now. So let's go to the WECC happenings on the next. So this morning, the WECC 157 project, this is the PRC 6.5 automatic underfrequency load shedding project that's updating the regional variance inside of that standard. The drafting team met today for the first time. They're working through an initial red line. This is should be, and it's looking like a fairly simple fix to the issue that was found, which was the cap provision was not captured inside of the regional variance. So the red line was presented. Most of the drafting team likes what they're looking at today. They felt that was a good starting point. We have another meeting next week on September 24th. And the anticipation at this point is that will, if the drafting team feels appropriate, they're going to send that out for comment, is what they're aiming at right now. Is after that meeting, they will send it out for a 30-day comment period, make sure that we're capturing industry comments for the next iteration of that. But that project's off and going. It's looking well. Also, we had the WECC 142 project that requests to retire BAL2 WECC 3 standard. That has been posted at NERC for 45-day for their 45-day comment period. That's out there. It'll be going through October. It'll be going into October, sorry, not the entirety of it. But that, again, I'm going to bring up that it's not another time to give comments on what should or shouldn't be or updating it. This is a procedural comment. Were procedures followed? Was process followed? Was this done the way it should have been? So those are the comments that they're looking for. But that is live at NERC for their 45-day comment period. Also, we sent out a few drafting team solicitations this afternoon. We had 2 new SARs approved at the last WSC meeting. This was for project 158 and 159. And both of these are 5-year reviews with IRO 2.7 and IRO 6 WECC 3. There's no issues identified with these currently. This is a look at it. It's part of the procedures to look at the standards to make sure that they're still effective, that there should be, but there's no issues identified. We're looking for drafting team members right now to participate in those 5-year reviews. Those were sent out individually as well, but you can nominate yourself in the same way for both. So those will be going out through October 3rd is what we're looking for, is to get those nominations. And then when they're done, when that is closed, we'll compile the drafting team slates presented to the WSC at their next scheduled meeting. See a comment. There are basically no comments on BAL2 WECC 3. Is it accurate that it will be likely to be on track for retirement? I would hope so. Speaking to that, I had conversations with NERC this week at the WSC meetings. We were at the SC meetings in Charlotte. It will be up to FERC's discretion. I can't comment on the way they're feeling on should it be retired, should it not be retired. We are hoping that the drafting team presented their rationale based on reliability strong enough that FERC will agree. But they could pass it back and say no, we would like it to stay. They could also ask for a potential field trial, which we've been talking to some people about, is that they may ask it that we do something like we would not have it be effective for a number of years and see if it affects reliability, see if there's any events that happen because of that. And if not, that might be something that they're looking for. But most likely it's either FERC will probably ask for some sort of field trial. But I can't speak to what the current commission is feeling when it comes to retiring standards or keeping standards at this point, as there has been a little bit of a turmoil there. So maybe is the best answer I can give for that one. But I would also like to point out that I got some emails this morning when we sent out those drafting team nominations. If you'd like to receive standards information, the notifications, the update, the announcements, please either send myself or standards@wec.org an email, and I can get you added to those distribution lists so that you can be made aware of. We use those distribution lists to formally announce drafting team meetings when we have to give the 14-day update, when we are soliciting drafting team members, when we are sending out for comment. We use those distribution lists. So if you are not getting those, or if you didn't get the drafting team solicitations today, that would be an indication that you're not on that list. Please send me an email, or like I said, standards@wec.org, an email with your name and the email address that you'd like added to that distribution list. And we'll make sure to get you on that so you can start getting those updates. With that, that's where we stand on some of the big standards happenings right now. We have the active project and 2 projects that are coming on, as well as monitoring how the comment period and the filing at FERC goes. And if there's questions, I'd love to take them. If not, I can pass it to the next person.
Thank you, Donovan. It looks like one just came in from Jenny. Considering WEC's extensive experience with wildfire mitigation activities, how is WEC working with FERC on the recent order on wildfire mitigation?
It will be, we talked a little bit about that coming out this morning. I don't know that we have a formalized approach or working with that yet, but absolutely we'll keep an update on where we start touching bases or our partnership with them on that, what can be done out here. It is a little tricky. It's hard to, as Steve Ruckert here, the director of standards, we were talking this morning, we can't make standards for distribution level. We can't also say there won't be lightning, there won't be different things. So the standards are tricky when it comes to wildfires. We have our jurisdiction and authority and what we can do, but we can give an update on how we're working with them considering that order coming out. So I appreciate the question.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to our Inverter-based resources initiative update.
There we go. Trying to get the video to work.
Hello, Abby.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abby Fellinger, and I'm a senior registration certification engineer here at WEC. And I have just a few updates to share with you today. There are no slides, but you should see a summarized list of registration agenda topics within the chat. So if you'd like to follow along. For the first update, WEC is continuing to reach out to our entities in monthly batches to register them as Category 2 GOGOPs if they meet the registration criteria. Our monthly batch process, it's going very well, and we'll continue that process through the end of the first quarter of 2026. And I do want to say that WEC really appreciates all the entities that have been providing requested information in a timely manner. This continued support will really help us stay on track with processing our registrations promptly. If you have any questions about the status of your Category 2 registration review, please just send an email to registration@wec.org, and we'll provide any information that you need. Secondly, all primary compliance contacts for entities that are registered currently as Category 1 generator owners, generator operators, you should have received an email from Tiffany Washington with NERC that included an attached letter from Jim Stewart, who's the director of NERC registration. That letter was sent out yesterday to notify generator owners and generator operators that the NERC compliance registry matrix will be published in a slightly different manner. That new published version should come out today. If not, it'll be coming out very soon. Specifically, the NERC registration matrix will be updated from showing a GO and a GOP as the listed functions to showing Category 1 GO and Category 1 GOP functions for all currently registered entities that are on the compliance registry. The letter also mentions that the regions in NERC are processing Category 2 GO/GOP requests and cores, and NERC is sending out those Category 2 registration letters with a future effective compliance date of May 15th, 2026. So, however, the NERC compliance registry matrix, even though those letters are going out, the matrix will not be updated to show those Category 2 GO/GOPs until May 15th, 2026. So if you have any questions about that matrix, please feel free to reach out to NERC registration or to WECC registration. We'd be glad to answer any questions you have there. For the third update, NERC is updating. There's a document called the Reliability Standards Compliance Dates for GOs and GOPs. This is a document for IBRs that's updated every quarter by NERC standards. According to a conversation I had with NERC standards this week, that quarter 3 version should be coming out. If not by the end of this week, it should be available to you next week. So that link that's in the chat, you should see an updated version of that next week. And for the final update, emails will be going out from our WECC registration department to primary compliance contacts. We're asking our generator owners and our operators to upload a current copy of the ERO Enterprise GO/GOP Asset Verification Form, and that will be applicable to all your generation assets if a current copy is not already available in core. So if you don't hear from us, we have the information we need. We will also include an update on what we're looking for in the WECC Weekly Update newsletter, so look for that as well. That completes the registration updates for today. So if there's any questions.
Thank you, Abby. We can move on to our Align update. I believe we're starting out with Angie.
All right. Perfect. Yeah, I think we can go to the next slide. So again, I'm Angie Shapiro. I'm the Oversight Analysis and Administration Manager. I'm going to be covering some updates that NERC recently put out in Align, specific to the periodic data submittal and attestation functionality. After I complete that, you will hear from Aldous and Calibo because they have some updates related to enforcement and mitigation modules. So we can go ahead and move to the next slide, please. So with the Align Release 7.3 update that came out middle of July, there were quite a few updates, and I'm going to highlight some that I think have broader impact. With the periodic data submittal module, they have updated the system to now send you a separate request for every function that the PDS is applicable to. So, for example, in the quarterly vegetation management FAC 3 periodic data submittal, if you are registered for both the TO as well as or the transmission operator and the generator operator owner, transmission owner and generator owner functions, you would receive a PDS for each of those or a request for each. And you'll need to submit a response for each. This was a request that came from industry so that they could clarify which function they were responding, because it is possible that you would have an attestation that one of the functions is not applicable. And so this would allow for that distinction between the two. So like I said, that if you have an attestation for one, it wouldn't affect the other one. And I think that's a good segue for the next slide, which has to do with attestations. This was a huge change that came through Align Release 7.3. They did, this major overhaul to address several of the enhancement requests that came from both registered entities as well as the regions. So one of the improvements, for instance, you as a registered entity will be able to modify active attestations, and then those modifications can come forward to the regions for approval. And so that's one of the improvements. But there are just so many changes that I am not going to go through a whole training session here. NERC has put a great training webinar together, and I'm going to put that link in the chat. You can go and watch that training session. I also have a link later in the presentation. But I did want to highlight a couple of things. Because of the big change that they made to the system, all attestations that were entered prior to July 12th, 2025 are no longer active. Now, before you go rushing in trying to create them, to kind of recreate the ones that existed, I wanted to point out you have to create attestations as part of an active monitoring activity, specifically a periodic data submittal or self-certification. You can't preemptively go in and say, this is not applicable to me, or we do not own these kinds of assets. You'll have to do that as part of an existing activity that WECC sends to you. As a reminder, attestations are strictly if you are responding do not own or not applicable. There's no reason to submit attestations for compliant or even not compliant responses. So in light of these attestation changes, the next round of periodic data submittals that WECC is sending out are an opportunity to provide those updated attestations. So coming up in October, as part of the quarter 3 vegetation management periodic data submittals, we will be sending to all applicable entities, and everyone who had an attestation is able to respond. And once those are in the system, then you will no longer receive and are approved by WECC. You'll no longer receive those types of requests. So we can go to the next slide, because I've put together a list of resources for you. Again, that attestation training webinar link is up there at the top. NERC has updated their training guides, their PDF training guides for the PDS and attestation functionality. They're really robust guides. They include a lot of detail and are quite user-friendly in my opinion. I also wanted to share the NERC Align and Secure Evidence Locker SEL page link with you. This is a web page on the NERC site that includes detailed release notes, so that you can go through and see all of the changes that are put out with each release. They have links to their user guides and additional training webinars. This is also a site where you can go and see an active status or outage information for Align and the Secure Evidence Locker. They list that information on that page. So that is all that I had to cover in my section. So I don't know if there are any questions, Maylee?
You received one. It says, will the FAC 3 PDS come out now in a line? This entity's had to ask for it and is hoping they no longer have to request it if they need to respond.
Right. I know we've had issues in the past where even if WECC does go through that effort, sometimes it doesn't show up. I'm hoping that those errors have all been corrected. Obviously, we do require that response between October 1st and October 20th for quarter 3. So please do reach out to us if you don't receive anything. But like I said, I am hopeful that we have worked out the bugs and you will receive that request. Anything
Thank
else?
you. That's it. We'll turn it over to Ben and Katie.
Thank you.
I am Ben Aldous. I'm a senior analyst here in enforcement, and joining me is Katie Calibo, senior mitigation engineer. We want to share the next batch of updates on the line. This has been a big summer for updates and improvements to a line and the SEL. So the most recent set, if we'll go to the next slide, the most recent set are specific to enforcement. These are quite a few of these things are things we've been working on for a long period of time, and we're really looking forward to putting them into production. So they include the ability of entities to notify us about completion of mitigation earlier in the process, the ability to add cause codes to your self-reports and self-logs, updates to email notifications, both the format of them and new email notifications that didn't exist before. And then, of course, a lot of bug fixes and performance enhancements. I refer to the full set of release notes that are available on that same Align and SEL page Angie was just talking about. For full details on all the changes, there's quite a few. But those first two in particular, I want to walk through in a little more detail because they are a significant change in functionality for entities. On the next slide, I have a screenshot from the Registered Entity User Guide for Enforcement, which is on that same page and linked on this slide. And you can now notify WECC that you have completed mitigation not only after WECC has accepted the mitigation plan or mitigating activities, but also as part of your initial submission and after submitting and before WECC has reviewed the mitigating activities or mitigation plan. And so you can do that as part of the submittal. There's a new checkbox that wasn't there before that says, I certify, all milestones have been completed, and by taking the submit for CEA verification action. And on the next slide, I do have a proviso about that, which is you must first have an actual completion date for all of the milestones. So the steps would be first to add the actual completion date for all of your milestones if that's not already there. Next, to check the box indicating that mitigation is complete and you are certifying it for WECC's review, and then you can submit for CEA review. Again, either initially when you first submit the mitigation, after you've submitted, before WECC has accepted, or after WECC has accepted the mitigation. And then next, there's an update for cause codes. So the prior to last year, we were using cause codes from the NERC event analysis process to help categorize, do trending and analysis on violations. And we have a new set of cause codes that are specific to enforcement, specific to non-compliance. And with the last update, there are even some enhancements to those. You can now add these to your self-reports and your self-logs when submitting them, indicating which you believe is the correct cause, corresponds to the correct cause, both for root and contributing causes. There is a user guide that NERC has put together that explains why the cause codes were developed, how they were developed, and how you can add them. That is available on the NERC enforcement website, and I have a link there to it, and also a training, so a user guide that explains the cause codes, and then the training video that walks through them and how to assign them. On the next slide, I have an example of how to do that from that training user guide, where you can search through the list of available cause codes and add them to your self-report and self-log. And then Katie is going to take it from here with a little bit of guidance on how to use these cause codes.
All right, thank you so much, Ben. Hello, my name is Katie Calibo. I am a senior risk and mitigation engineer at WECC in the enforcement department. So I wanted to talk through how to pick which cause code, because these are significantly different, I think, from the previous version of cause codes, as they are very enforcement specific. One thing to note is we have been piloting these for close to 2 years now at the ERO level. So we had a chance to kind of work out some bugs and to get as much consistency as possible across the different regions. One thing we found is with the previous version of cause codes, a lot of times the difficulty was nothing really applied, or it didn't suit the situation very well. With the new cause codes, we sort of had the opposite issue where the cause codes actually fit too well. And you could often have 3, 4, 5 different cause codes that all reasonably fit the situation. So what we took into account is whether we wanted something that was more specific, but not necessarily as in-depth, or if we wanted something that was a closer match to the actual root cause. And what we've settled on is a closest match to the root cause. Now, what this means is you will see a lot of repetition in the cause codes that you're selecting, and I have some data to share about that in a moment. But for example, if you were trying to pick a cause code for the classic situation where an email that had a time response and it did not get passed to the correct person, right? One cause code that could fit very well might be incorrect internal or lack of internal communication, but that's really kind of the first level. What we'd really want to know is why didn't that email get passed along, right? Was it more to do with a process or a control, or did the person not know there was a compliance obligation? So maybe it was a training issue. So you may see us revising the cause code to something that is not what you have chosen, and that is likely to do our best to line up with the precedent we've established across the ERO in the past 2 years of kind of practicing with these codes. If you see a cause code and you don't understand why we picked that, please feel free to reach out to us and we'd be more than happy to kind of walk you through the logic. And could you go to the next slide, please? So speaking of the piloting, we have about 1,800 cases that have had cause codes assigned since we started working through these across the ERO. These are the top 5 cause codes, and they make up the majority of the cause codes that have been selected. Specifically, the top 2, the ineffective preventative controls and the lack of or deficient policy procedure process, made up about 40% of the cause codes that were selected. So you'll see quite a few of those. So if you find yourself selecting those a lot because they match most closely with the root cause, just know that's pretty consistent across the ERO. So that shouldn't be a huge shock. And that is all that I have for cause codes.
Thank you so much, Ben and Katie. We'll move on to our next section, which will be Ben and Josh.
Thanks, Maylee. And if you move forward, I want to highlight some recent outreach that WECC has done on internal compliance programs and establishing an effective internal compliance program in your organization. And as a reminder, I have some of the components that we believe are part of an effective internal compliance program highlighted here on this page in order to ensure that your organization can prevent, detect, and mitigate non-compliance and demonstrate your organizational commitment to reliability and security. So we spend a lot of time talking about ICPs, internal compliance programs, because we see them relate so closely to an entity's ability to be effective in engaging with us across all of our different interactions, be that self-reports, self-logging, calculating penalties, as well as outside of enforcement in audits, in doing risk analysis and oversight planning, data collection, and so on. So on the next slide, I have a couple of examples of the outreach that we've done on this. In March, Josh and I gave a presentation on the components of an effective internal compliance program at the March Reliability and Security Workshop. And then just last month, we published a version of the same recommendations that we shared then in a self-assessment format. And the reason we did this was, first, we've gotten feedback from entities that that they would like to continue to have easy access to updated and useful material that has been shared through these outreach events. You know, you don't have to say now which workshop was that and how to find that in the calendar. And the other is that we want to keep the conversation fresh and ongoing, and we want to encourage entities to have a lot of introspection and robust internal discussion about their ICPs. So on that self-assessment, on the next slide, I have the outline of the components, right? We have a bunch of prompts encouraging you to understand your own compliance program across each of those 5 topics. We've got examples based on observations where we've seen entities succeed in each area. And because there's no one way to have an effective program, it's really going to depend on the size and structure of your organization. We wanted to categorize the examples by, is this for a higher inherent risk entity or lower? Is this for a centralized model or a decentralized model? But I do want to clarify this is not a new kind of monitoring activity, but rather it's a recommended action for entities to reevaluate their programs and make sure that they're continuously improving them, because we do expect entities to be able to speak fluently about how ICPs, how their ICP reduces their reliability risk. So going forward, plan to continue the conversation, continue to engage entities and industry, and continuing to improve your internal compliance program demonstrates that commitment to reliability. That's all I had to share, Maylee.
Wonderful. Thank you for that update. And I'm not seeing any questions for you, so we can go ahead to our next slide. Just a reminder that the next call for the Reliability and Security Oversight update will be on November 20th. Thank you again to all of our presenters. We appreciate you being here today and providing these updates and getting this information out to all our stakeholders. And we hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.